Dismissal with prejudice is warranted to ensure the integrity of the judicial system and the efficient administration of justice. Your motion to dismiss with prejudice is granted.
And with that, Alec Baldwin is a free man tonight after the manslaughter case against him comes to a spectacular end. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. And tonight, Alec Baldwin's criminal trial is over, and as you just saw, on hearing that news, Baldwin broke down in tears, the judge dismissing the trial with prejudice, meaning it is totally over. No refiling possible, and all of it after the actor's lawyers dropped a bombshell that effectively made the case that prosecutors buried key evidence. Now, in one stunning moment, the special prosecutor insisted on taking the stand herself over why that evidence, some ammo, was never disclosed to the defense. Take a listen.
You also did not allow the defense to view that evidence at any point during our request to review evidence in this case?
I had never seen it, and I didn't realize that it wasn't under the same case number because I'm not a law enforcement officer and I don't work at the Sheriff's Department. But you are right.
And you concede that they are Starline brass, silver 45, right?
I can.
Any favorable evidence you understand as a prosecutor has to be turned over to the defense, correct?
I do.
Any evidence that could be used as a defense to potentially be favorable has to be turned over to the defense.
Absolutely.
And joining us now is NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin. Dana, just first off, that is remarkable. And that was voluntary? That was the prosecutor saying, whoa, 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 whoa. No, we can explain. Put me on the stand.
Yeah, the judge says, you don't have to take the stand. And she insisted, and it didn't help her case because she was called to the table. And here's how this kind of all unfolded. So we learned yesterday that someone, a friend of Hannah Gutierrez Reed's father, she is the armorer, her father is a fellow armorer, went to the Sheriff's Department the day she was convicted and said, hey, I've got these rounds that I think could be related to the death of Helena Hutchins. You might want to take a look at it. We saw the body cam video of him entering that sheriff's office, trying to hand them over. And we learned today the detective also took the stand. She said that it was her supervisor and the prosecutor who decided to enter them into evidence, but not in the rust evidence box, which is crucial because the defense says even if the rounds were not related to the shooting, because you didn't disclose it, it's grounds for dismissal, and the judge agreed.
So basically, hey, yeah, file them, but file them under a different case number.
Exactly. That's what the defense claims. Now, we never got to the point of whether that happened. As you heard her explain, she says, you know, these rounds were dissimilar from the live rounds that we found on the set of Rust. She thought that, you know, these were not going to be a match because the person who brought them had held them in Arizona. Well, this film set was in New Mexico. So for her, if she's, you know, telling the truth here, she was like, I didn't think that this would be connected to the case. And this was literally the day of the conviction. But they should have been brought up to the Baldwin defense, and it didn't. And the state said that there's no way to right this wrong than to dismiss. And that's what we saw. And I think people still have their jaw on the floor because this is something that you do not see every day.
You don't see it every day. And actually, I mean, there's been so much talk about a possible acquittal or a possible mistrial with like a ton of different theories out there that are much more plausible than what we just saw happen today.
Yeah.
Did you expect, was any of this circulating at all, or was this a total surprise?
I think what's interesting is the defense has tried several times to get this case dismissed, and they have cited other allegations of prosecutorial misconduct. The judge has dismissed it every single time. But there was a point where the judge started asking questions, hard-hitting questions, and since this morning, you kind of saw the writing on the wall that this does not look good for the prosecution. You've heard several legal analysts say that this case should have never really been taken to trial because there were just so many unanswered questions and just things that didn't seem like they should be holding this actor accountable, because his defense says, look, he was an actor. He was doing his job. He did not load the rounds. He did not bring the live ammo on the set. Therefore, he should not be held accountable. But in this particular moment where we see the judge dismiss the case without prejudice, this means they cannot retry. And this is it. This is the end of the legal road for the legal criminal road for the Rust trial when it ascertains to Alec Baldwin.
Wow, such a fascinating turn of events. Dana, your coverage of this has been incredible. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And turning now to the legal analyzing of all this is Angela Sinandella. Angela, you've been there with us as well, breaking this case down. Have you ever seen anything like this?
Look, Gadi, so a motion to dismiss is always an uphill battle, but I will say that Brady violations aren't totally uncommon. Frankly, a lot of the cases that the Innocence Projects bring that are eventually overturned or defendants are exonerated are based in these Brady violations, because one thing that the judge said today, which I think is important, is that in order to even equate to a Brady violation, you don't have to prove that the prosecutors had malintent, that they were intending to hide this, intending to suppress. All you have to prove is that it was suppressed, that it was material, and could have been favorable to the accused. So in this case, as in many cases, sometimes there are accidents, sometimes there is nefarious intent, but this does happen, sadly, Gadi.
And so sorry for this really ridiculous question, but what is a Brady violation again?
Sure. So every defendant has this constitutional right that in a trial, the investigators and the prosecution have to present to the defense any evidence that could possibly be exculpatory. And there's a reason for that. It's because there's obviously difference in resources. And when the investigators do an investigation, they can often come upon all sorts of evidence. So there is a rule that they must share evidence that could be favorable and material to the defendant's case with the defense, really as soon as they find it. They can't wait till after the trial has started. So what the judge ruled here is that this constituted a Brady violation because there was suppression, it was material, and it was favorable. And at this point, the defense doesn't even have time or an option to investigate, to test the ammo, to try to change their strategy to accommodate this new information. So as a result, it's just totally unfair to the defense.
And not only this defense, but what about Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, who is currently in prison right now?
Yeah, it sounds very relevant, but I will say that when this special prosecutor took the stand, she said something interesting, and I can't verify the content, but she claimed that this retired police officer who brought the information forward, so the Good Samaritan who presented the evidence, had also presented the evidence to Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's defense attorneys, and they saw it and they decided not to proceed with it. So that is relevant if it's true. So it's possible it could overturn and exonerate Hannah Gutierrez-Reed as well, but it's also possible that in that case, it wouldn't be as relevant.
Is there a case to be made of ineffective counsel if it turned out that this is what ended the case for Alec Baldwin?
Yeah, that is certainly possible. That's also, though, a really high bar to clear in effective counsel. But, you know, the prosecutor also said that there's a reason. Again, this is just her claim, but that there's a reason why counsel did not present this. And it's because she felt that this information would not be favorable to Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. The fact that she may have had access to live rounds and could possibly be implicated in the ones who brought it to the set. So it's unclear here the direct implications on her. But I do think there were some allegations today that are really relevant with regards to the ammo supplier, Seth Kenney, who was exonerated pretty early from this case and no charges were brought against him. But there were allegations made on the stand today that he was trying to sabotage her, which would be relevant.
Wow. Angela, thank you so much again for your analysis on this trial that has taken so many twists and turns. I really appreciate it. And meanwhile, tonight, the Biden campaign is dealing with the fallout of another set of gaffes. You might have seen the memes by now, but here are the actual moments as they happened yesterday.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she's not qualified to be president.
Now, that second one happened when he accidentally referred to Kamala Harris as Vice President Trump during a much-hyped press conference that was supposed to show how capable Biden still is in dealing with live questions from a fiery press corps. But it looks like that might have backfired for a small but growing number of Democrats that are asking Biden to drop out of the race right now. And so far, about 20 out of the 217 congressional Democrats are calling on Biden to suspend his campaign. Even still, President Biden is maintaining a defiant stance, speaking to voters in Michigan just a little while ago, first at this restaurant and then at a rally that just wrapped up a few moments ago.
I am running, and we're going to win. I'm the nominee of the Democratic Party, the only Democrat or Republican who has beaten Donald Trump ever. And I'm going to beat him again.
Now let's bring in NBC senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez from Detroit to break it down. Gabe, I'm sure you were monitoring that. So I guess the first question for so many of us, were there any gaffes today?
No, Gadi. Actually, as you said, this rally just wrapped up just a few moments ago. I was standing here watching it. A lot of energy in this rally. I would say, of the rallies I've seen for President Biden, this and the rally right after the debate in Raleigh, North Carolina, were the two biggest ones. Look, he was here in his element. It was a diverse crowd. It was held in a high school gymnasium. But this was meant to show that he can do this job. He's trying to rally support here in Michigan, which is such a critical state. The Biden campaign acknowledging that the blue wall, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, are their clearest path to victory in November. And as you know, Gadi, over the past several months, because of his handling of the Israel-Hamas war, he's had an increasing amount of trouble with Arab American voters here in Michigan. So his campaign making it a point to come here. After that press conference yesterday, they want to show him out here talking to voters. You saw that event right before this rally. No gas, but again, Gadi, he was speaking with a teleprompter here at this rally. He did speak to an overflow crowd right before the main portion where he spoke off the cuff. But senior White House official telling me that, it was great. There was one part of this where he laid out his first 100 days and the priorities he wants to lay out, that he wants to do in his first 100 days, including Roe v. Wade and reproductive rights. And that is something that the campaign certainly wants to get across, especially amid the backdrop of Project 2025, which so many Democrats are criticizing the Trump campaign and former Trump administrations about. Got it.
And Gabe, Biden is pushing back on the press tonight. He's been talking about how Trump has been given a free pass. He's not going so far as to call us a fake media, but it does seem like he's starting to bash the press here. In fact, let's take a quick listen.
Well, since the debate, the press and their good guys and women up there, they've been hammering me. I make a lot of mistakes. No, it's okay. They've been hammering me because I sometimes confuse names. I say that's Charlie instead of Bill. But guess what? Donald Trump has gotten a free pass.
A free pass. And Gabe, I mean, hearing those boos from the crowd, I mean, it just throws me back to the press pin where we got a lot of that during the Trump campaigns. So same energy or completely different vibe?
Well, it was indeed very Trumpian, Gadi, and I got to say, it was very unusual to see that in a rally for President Biden. He really hadn't done that before, but you can clearly see he has been irritated with the media coverage over the last 2 weeks or so since the debate, and actually managed to speak with a senior White House official that said that he looked like he was having fun. He has been upset by that media coverage, and he was essentially messing with us. That's what the senior White House official said. Look, this is the Biden campaign wants to get him out there. He's sitting down for an interview with our colleague Lester Holt on Monday. Then he's heading out to the West Coast, to Nevada, to speak at two conferences there. They want to reclaim the narrative here. It's a big question of whether they will be able to do that. As you've been covering, he's facing a lot of challenges on Capitol Hill, Gadi.
Messing with us, and yet, I mean, we're not the meme lords. And I know just the press conference last night, you look at that.
He actually used a different word, but I'm translating here. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So last night, if you look at both of the totality of what he said, the gaffes were definitely outliers. But those are the things that became memes and viral moments so quickly. So is this about the press, or is this about the campaign strategy, or what? Because, I mean, the campaign strategy right now seems to be to put him in circumstances where any slight step can totally undo everything he says, and that can happen at a moment's notice.
Yes, but that's being president of the United States, isn't it? So, yes, there's a lot of criticism that the Biden campaign, the White House, his handlers have kept him in so-called bubble wrap over the last year or two. That's what his critics say. They say he didn't, he turned down interviews for the Super Bowl. He didn't do as many press conferences as some of his critics would have liked him to do. But at this point, his campaign and the White House, they do seem to realize that they want to get him out there. They want to get him speaking with people. That is where, that is in his element. He seemed to be having a lot of fun here. There was a lot of union members here, a very diverse crowd, as I said. And so they feel that the more they can get him in these types of settings, the better he will do and the better he will be able to turn this narrative around, Gadi.
We'll see how that goes. Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so much. And it's been about 2 weeks now since President Joe Biden gave that debate performance for the ages. And just like that, a growing number of Democrats started calling for Biden to drop out of the race. And next came talk about who might replace him at the top of the ticket. And at the top of the obvious list is Vice President Kamala Harris. And sources are saying the Biden campaign has quietly been assessing Harris's chances against Trump. And that was after a recent poll showed that head-to-head, she would beat Trump among registered voters. And other names being tossed about include California's Governor Gavin Newsom, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and Illinois' Governor J.B. Pritzker. But there still is one name that rises above all others in the world of Democrats, and that is this guy, two-term Barack Obama, who definitely wouldn't be elected president again because of the whole Constitution thing and the 12th Amendment that says no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of the vice president of the United States. So that rules him out for the VP ticket, right? And since Obama has already served 2 terms, that would make him ineligible, right? Well, it seemed pretty straightforward. And then all of a sudden, some Democrats are starting to look into every crook and cranny of the Constitution, and they're pointing to the 22nd Amendment that says, quote, no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. It doesn't say you can't be president for more than 2 terms, just that you can't be elected. So there is this very obscure argument being made right now that if Harris was to step down, Biden could pick Obama to be vice president maybe, and then Biden could step aside, allowing Obama to be president again, since he wasn't elected to that position. Georgetown constitutional law professor Michelle Goodwin joins us now to talk about whether or not this could actually happen. Professor, this seems like one of those things where you have one kid in your class being like, technically, is this possible? Like, shoot us straight. Is it possible or not?
So the Democrats are scrambling. Technically, there's nothing in the Constitution that would actually bar a former president who has even been elected 2 terms from holding an office as vice president, so long as that individual has not served more than 2 years with somebody else, and then that person would be limited to 1 term. The technicalities of the 22nd Amendment were in direct response to FDR. But notably, before that time, the reality of someone actually serving 3 terms as a president was a reality in the United States. And it's worth noting that we've had examples since then that would have drawn question to this, including with President Johnson and also with Gerald Ford, notably 2 presidents who left office, sadly, with the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and then also Richard Nixon stepping away. Notably, in the Johnson case, Johnson was denied essentially a 2nd term in office because of the Vietnam War.
Interesting. So let's put a pause on the outlandish and go to the maybe not so outlandish idea of like an open convention or a contested convention. How do you see that working? And what is the difference between an open convention and a contested convention?
Yes, well, this has all become far more complicated, as you say. And one thing that I do want to note here is that these kind of dreamlike situations, many of them toss the vice president under the bus, which is short-sighted for Democrats. She is the vice president. She has served the last 4 years with President Biden. And even the histrionics with regard to President Biden is rather interesting, considering the former President Donald Trump having been indicted more than 90 times, and even in these past 4 years, having juries find him guilty, criminally and civilly liable. So going into this convention, Biden is the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. He has gone through primaries. He has won. There is no other person who stands to win overall there. That is not to say that delegates couldn't come together and take a different direction.
And I guess real quick, back to the Obama question. Realistically, as the biggest dim out there, he's got three options. He can quietly stay in the wings. He could loudly support Biden, or he could possibly become some sort of kingmaker at a open convention.
So
what do you see happening here?
So what he's been doing is he's been supporting President Biden. He cares about him. They've worked together. I think that there is a sense of loyalty there. I think he would do what is necessary to be supportive of President Biden, whatever it is that looks like. We have seen the former president through 2 terms. He is not a person who showboats. You know, he's not a person who publicly panders either. I think that there's a strong interest in making sure that the Democratic Party is as strong as possible and that they prevail in November, no matter what this all looks like. And I don't think that he would wish to be disruptive of the ticket as it stands now, or Vice President Kamala Harris, if something were to happen with President Biden interrupting what would be the natural elevation of her to the presidency.
Soon to be seen, I guess. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And a reminder, on Monday, Lester Holt is going to be sitting down with President Biden in an exclusive one-on-one interview. You can watch a preview on NBC Nightly News first, then the full unedited interview in a primetime special at 9 p.m. Eastern on your NBC station and here on NBC News Now, wherever you stream. Then our coverage of the Republican National Convention will continue at 9:30 with the NBC News team in Milwaukee. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started, and up next, we've got 5 days in the dark and counting. Frustration in Houston reaching a breaking point. Extreme heat and very little relief. How people are coping and when the power outages from Beryl might be over. Plus, changing the landscape. We head to the Pacific Northwest, where the hope to rebuild ecosystems involved destroying infrastructure. How removing dams is giving new life to rivers. And later this hour, carrying a tune, child's play for this 8-year-old you gotta meet tonight. His love of music and production, even making his family speechless. How he's already making a name for himself in the music business in tonight's Future of Everything. Welcome back. A fire aboard an American Airlines flight leads to panic. That's coming up ahead. But here are some headlines we're watching tonight. A New York judge is denying Rudy Giuliani's attempt at getting bankruptcy protection. Former President Trump's one-time personal attorney has been trying to declare bankruptcy after being ordered to pay $148 million to Georgia election workers he defamed after the 2020 election. The judge said Giuliani hadn't been transparent about his full financial picture, so his creditors can continue to try and collect the money he currently owes. And no verdict today in this Senator Menendez bribery trial. The jury finally got the case this afternoon and deliberated for about 3 hours, and they'll pick back up on Monday, where they'll have to decide on those corruption charges. He could face decades in prison if convicted. And Idaho and West Virginia are asking the Supreme Court to review rulings that block them from enforcing laws banning transgender athletes from competing in sports. Now, it's still not clear if the court will take those up, but the 2 separate cases were filed yesterday and involve transgender athletes who hope to compete on female teams at the K through 12 and college levels. And Dollar General is settling disputes over apparent workplace safety violations. The company reached a settlement with the Federal Labor Department, and they're required to pay $12 million and make a bunch of changes. And this is the latest fine they've racked up since 2017 over things like blocked fire exits and dangerous amounts of clutter in their stores. And it is National French Fry Day, and that means you can get discounted or even free fries at some places. McDonald's is offering reward members a free medium fry, while Smashburger is offering free fries for anyone with a purchase. And a chaotic scene at San Francisco International Airport. An American Airlines flight evacuated after smoke filled the cabin. NBC's Liz Kreutz has the latest.
Tonight, chaos on the tarmac at San Francisco International Airport.
Evacuate, don't get your things, let's go, off the aircraft.
You can see and hear the panic as passengers aboard an American Airlines flight bound for Miami were forced to evacuate after a fire broke out in the cabin while they were boarding.
It's American 2045, we got a mayday, mayday, mayday. There's a fire in the back of the aircraft. Right here.
Passenger Carlos Leza was on the flight when he says he heard someone in the back of the plane scream out about a fire. He looked back and saw smoke.
I didn't see any flames, but I saw some smoke. I could smell something electrical burning. People just start panicking, pushing people towards the front of the plane.
It sounds pretty scary.
It was.
Emergency slides were deployed as passengers escaped from both the emergency exits and the jet bridge. Videos from inside showing those tense moments.
Leave your carry-on bags.
Airport officials say 3 passengers had minor injuries. According to American Airlines, the smoke came from a laptop in a passenger's bag. Writing, the bag was quickly removed by our crew members and all customers exited the aircraft. Look here, and you can see first responders investigating a laptop on the tarmac.
I'm just glad it happened when we were on ground.
A terrifying close call that could have been much worse.
Liz Kreutz joins us here in the studio. Liz, this isn't the first time a laptop has sparked a fire on a plane, right?
No, it's not. I mean, even just last year, there was an incident on a flight for United from San Diego to Newark that was actually in the air and had to make an emergency landing after a laptop battery sparked and caused a fire. So this is something that is happening. It's scary. We don't exactly know the cause of this incident yet. They've just said that it was related to this laptop. But I think, Gadi, it has to do with kind of when you go to the airport and you check in, they say, do you have any lithium batteries in your suitcase when you check a bag? It's because there is this concern. So at least if you bring it in your carry-on, there's a feeling that you'd be able to extinguish it faster. The FAA is now investigating.
Wow, so sketchy.
Yeah.
Liz, thank you. And 5 days after Beryl slammed Texas, power is still out for nearly 1 million people, and there's still no clear timeline for when everyone's going to get it back. People are still lining up at cooling and distribution centers for food, ice, and to escape the extreme heat. And that heat is what may have led to the death of a 93-year-old at a senior living community that doesn't have power still. Now, 4 other people have died this week in Texas from heat complications during these outages, and it's all leading to frustration towards the energy company there, CenterPoint, who say they are aiming to restore 80% of power by Sunday. That is not 100%, that is 80%, and a lot of people are taking to social media to document what's going on. Watch.
I started clearing out all our food in the fridge and freezer. So all of it went bad. Only relief we've found is putting like towels in the ice water and just putting them around our necks or our backs. That's the only way I've been able to sleep in the apartment at night, is like sleeping with wet towels on me. We resorted to like putting a little bed in the back of my car. So fingers crossed, today is the day we get power. Please, CenterPoint.
Fingers crossed. NBC's Priscilla Thompson is joining us now from Houston. Priscilla, what else are you learning about the woman that died there?
Yeah, so we know that is 93-year-old Barbara Sturgis. Her family, her son says that she was living in this independent living facility. They had been without power, but they were using a backup generator to help keep the common areas cool. He said that when he went there on Tuesday, it seemed like those generators were working, but that by Thursday morning, when he got the call that his mother had passed and he went up there, it clearly felt much hotter in there. We know that at that point, they were voluntarily evacuating some folks there. So no official word on whether or not her death was heat-related, but the family certainly feels like it may have played a factor. And what we do know is that we have seen in this area at least 4 deaths related to the heat because people don't have power. And so officials here are very concerned that number could continue to tick up. I will tell you, it was triple-digit heat earlier today. It did rain, and so it's much cooler now. But with that rain, the folks who were working on the power lines had to stop working because of that that rain and lightning. So on one hand, it has probably helped to cool things down for some people who are at home without power, but it also means that the work to restore their power also had to stop as a result of that. Gadi?
Oh, man, and it's not just the heat that people have no power have to worry about, right? What else is there?
Yeah, and so that means, you know, unable to keep food cold. A lot of people are having to throw away hundreds of dollars worth of food in their refrigerators and freezers, and they're finding themselves at distribution sites like this one, trying to get water, ice, non-perishables, whatever they can to keep going. I spoke with a couple who is taking care of their 3 grandchildren during this time, and they told me that they actually had to start pawning some of their jewelry to be able to put gas in the car so that they could drive to distribution sites and wait in very long lines to get those supplies and then drive to a cooling center to try to stay cool. I want to just play for you some of what they shared with me.
But what we got to do is we got to hop on long lines like this just to get ice and food. And then after this, we're going to go to another cooling center and wait on a line that's practically an hour long just to get into a cooling center.
And the only way we got money this time, we had to make sure a pawn shop was open so we can pawn our ring off just to get gas.
You all pawned your wedding rings to get gas?
Just to get food.
Just to get gas and food.
Yeah, that's how hard it is.
And so you really get a sense there of how this impacts people who are on the brink. And of course, the other issue that people are dealing with is that they're trying to check the Centerpoint website to see when they're going to have power restored. Some people are seeing that their power has been restored on the website, but that has not actually been their experience. So there's been a lot of glitches there. I will tell you, I am someone also without power, and online it says that my area has been assessed, but still no power and no word yet on when it will be back on. But as you noted, Centerpoint says that they hope to have 80% of customers restored by the end of the night on Sunday. Gadi?
It is so confusing out there, and I can't get over that couple that had to pawn their jewelry, pawn their wedding ring for gas just to go stand in line to get cool. Priscilla, some powerful reporting there. Thank you so much for keeping us abreast.
You bet.
And the FBI is investigating a data hack impacting more than 100 million AT&T customers. They say no personal information was compromised, but text and call records were stolen. NBC senior correspondent Tom Costello tells us how the company is responding.
The breach was massive, affecting nearly 110 million wireless devices. AT&T says it learned in April that hackers had accessed logs of phone calls and texts between May and October of 2022 and January 2nd, 2023. But the FBI advised against making the hack public due to potential risks to national security and/or public safety. While the content of the texts and personal information were not released, cybersecurity pros say the phone numbers alone could compromise personal relationships, police informants, national security contacts, journalists, and whistleblowers used by criminals or foreign governments.
Connecting that phone number to an email address, to a username, to a home address is not particularly difficult, given all the breaches that we've seen over the last decade.
AT&T says the hack occurred on a third party's cloud platform, but through an AT&T vulnerability. One suspect has already been apprehended, the latest in a steady stream of hacks and ransom attacks. Last month, auto dealers nationwide were locked out of the CDK business software they use.
We can't cut checks. We can't service cars. Everything has to be done by hand.
The U.S. cybersecurity chief says we all must do our part.
Implement multi-factor authentication, complex unique passwords in a password manager, updating your software, and being able to recognize and report those phishing emails.
Tom Costello, thank you. And coming up, our first look at new images of galaxies far, far away. We're going to break down what it tells us about the world way beyond our solar system. That's going to be in the future of everything. But first, we got to see this. We've been talking a lot over the last few weeks about the weather, but Las Vegas is seeing record-breaking heat. And today was the 7th straight day the temperature hiked above 115 degrees. And a couple out there proved just how hot it was by frying their breakfast in 120-degree heat. Sunny side up, I guess. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. And here's some of the stories happening out west that we're following right now. A helicopter crash in Hawaii has killed one person, and rescue crews are still looking for two others after the chopper went down off the coast of Kauai yesterday. Now, the helicopter is part of a family-owned tour company that's been flying for over 3 decades, and the investigation into the cause of the crash is still underway. And staying in Hawaii for a second, this right here, this looks kind of like spray paint, right? But no, that is Mother Nature. The Kilauea volcano erupted last month, and it left this crack in these bright deposits of crystals. And geologists say these yellow lines are actually made of sulfur. And as many as 2,400 patients at 2 Oregon hospitals have been notified that they may have been exposed to HIV and hepatitis. Health workers there say an anesthesiologist might not have followed infection prevention protocols, and the hospitals are telling those patients that they can get tested for free, and if positive, they'll be notified about what to do next. And the biggest dam removal project ever in the United States is now in its final stretch. The dam split this river running from Oregon through California, and the new hope is that now not only the river, but the people who depend on it will find salvation. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson has that story.
Deep in the once free-flowing shoal of the Pacific Northwest, a rebirth is finally taking shape.
It represents a future for our people, for kids and grandkids and generations to come.
An ancient way of water, the lifeblood that once empowered the beautiful banks of the renowned Klamath River, was all but lost for more than 100 years. Now it's slowly but surely flowing again.
There was a time when I didn't think I'd see this day.
Leif Hillman is a member of the Karuk tribe, who for generations has been fighting for something many say is vital, removing a damaging blockade of dams.
I've spent the better part of my adult life working to remove dams on the Klamath River.
For thousands of years, this was one of the largest salmon-producing rivers on the West Coast, fueling entire economies of several indigenous communities. But at the turn of the 20th century, the installation of 4 monstrous dams fractured the iconic waterway, spanning from Oregon through California. The dams initially powered surrounding communities, but have since become obsolete, aging structures, as stagnant water turned to toxic algae.
We were the first to discover this toxic algae.
And the salmon were decimated. An estimated 90% of the native salmon species has been lost since the dams were installed. In 2002, over 34,000 fish were killed almost all at once.
The toxic algae was in the reservoirs. So if these dams were kept in place, the fish had a real likelihood of going extinct in this watershed.
Dam removal in the U.S. is at an all-time high. Over 2,100 dams have been removed since 1912, with nearly half happening in the last decade.
River people stand tall. The dams are gonna fall.
Here, the effort has been entirely indigenous-led. Tribal elders, scholars, and young activists uniting in protest for decades.
Take back your toxins.
Klamath River Renewal Corporation CEO Mark Bransom has dedicated years to making sure this vision comes to life.
We've heard it said that this is the largest dam removal and environmental restoration project anywhere in the world.
But there are some pain points. With wildfire season ongoing, losing reservoirs created by the dams impacts the way wildfires are fought in the region, requiring some creative solutions.
We've provided access points so they have the ability to drive right down to the river's edge to fill water trucks, and that will really help replace the loss of the reservoirs as a wildfire fighting water source.
The way forward is one of teamwork, as local tribes work side by side with conservationists to breathe life into the ecosystem, all with new efforts to sow for the future. The Yurok tribe has been hand-planting 8.5 tons of native seeds and plans to keep going for the next 3 years, all while the fish are expected to usher in a new generation.
This year, we'll start to see adult Chinook and coho moving upstream, but it'll really be 2 to 3 generations before we see sustainable populations being established in those tributaries.
My kids will be telling a different story. It's not going to be a story of continued decline. It's going to be a story of actually recovery and regaining the abundance that we once enjoyed.
A renaissance of water, returning the river's sacred right back to those who harness its true power and uninhibited freedom.
Let the water flow. Let's bring in Steve Patterson. He's with us on set here. So, Steve, this is such a big project, and you heard them talking about how it's going to take generations for a lot of the restoration, the habitats, the wildlife to come back. But, like, how fast can we take these dams down?
The dams will be gone, unbelievably, they say, by October. In fact, like, when they say gone, they mean gone. Like, none of the equipment that you saw in the video behind the CEO will be there. None of even the dirt they're saying that the demolition created will be there. It will look just like a river come October. By November, it will just be a river system. As for when the wildlife comes back, though, obviously, that's a different question.
Did they talk at all about what we'll start to see first? What, I mean, is it habitats? Is it greenery? Animals?
So
wildlife?
some of the fish are already coming back, right? Like the salmon are already starting to repopulate. But the sustainable sort of populations that we saw for hundreds of years, where these tribes were able to literally live and thrive off of the river just because of the fish in the water, we're not going to have that for generations. The seeds that they're planting in there, they're sowing like, you know, tons and tons of these seeds. Those won't start sprouting for generations. So it's not necessarily us that's going to sort of see this progression. It's more our kids or our kids' kids. But the foundation is being laid by the dams being destroyed. It's such a big deal.
And it's so wild that all that started by the detection of algae from those tribes, not necessarily the Army Corps of Engineers or anybody that's
entirely indigenous led. It was the people who saw a problem, who stuck up for it, who said something. And that's what led to the dams being removed.
Now, the biggest removal in history. Thank you so much, Steve Patterson. And coming up, the renewed hopes for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, the key issues that still could lead to a roadblock. And welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. U.S. and German officials say they have foiled a Russian plot to assassinate a German CEO. That CEO runs a major German arms manufacturer that sells ammo to Ukraine, and apparently he was just one of many targets. But sources say the plot against him was more advanced, and now the Biden administration says it's worried about more threats from Russia in the future. And in Paris, the government is busing thousands of homeless immigrants out of the city right before the Olympics. The immigrants say they were promised housing, but they ended up back on the street or flagged for deportation. Government officials say they've evicted about 5,000 people in the last year, calling it a voluntary program meant to solve Paris's emergency housing shortage. And in Australia, a married couple have been charged with spying for Russia. They allegedly handed over defense material related to Australia's national security. They could face up to 15 years in jail if convicted, or even life if it's proved that they gave that material to Moscow. And remember when Rihanna made headlines for performing at a pre-wedding event back in March? Well, that same wedding is still going on, and tonight is the grand finale. It's been dubbed the craziest, richest wedding ever, and it's one for the son of the richest man in Asia. And that wedding has already racked up hundreds of millions of dollars and has sparked online debate about displays of wealth. And some big news out of the Middle East. President Biden has announced that Israel and Hamas have apparently agreed to framework for a ceasefire agreement, but with the caveat that more work still needs to be done. NBC News correspondent Halal Garani has more from Tel Aviv.
President Biden has reiterated on social media what he said at a news conference in Washington yesterday, that there is a framework agreement between Hamas and Israel. He tweeted that 6 weeks ago, I laid out a comprehensive framework for how to achieve a ceasefire and bring the hostages home. There is still work to be done, he tweeted, but that framework is now agreed by Israel and Hamas. He also added that he was determined to make it happen. Of course, there are still many obstacles and roadblocks in the way. We also heard from Hamas, who told NBC News that there was no agreement, that the gaps were still wide between the two sides. What are the possible obstacles? Well, we have, of course, the very thorny question of who will run Gaza after the war. Will it be Hamas? This is something that Israel does not want. Will it be an Israeli-controlled military occupation? This is, of course, a deal breaker for Hamas. Will it be a multinational force that may be potentially trained by the United States? Those are all open questions. Open questions as well as to who will police and control the border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. Currently, the Israeli military is occupying a key sliver of land called the the Philadelphia corridor. And this is something that is also not acceptable to Egypt, which is, of course, on the southern border with Gaza. So we are still keeping our eye on these negotiations. They took place in Doha and in Cairo. With the president's tweet, are we closer than we were before? It's important to remember we've been here before.
Absolutely. Hala, thank you. And before we go, it is time for the future of everything and unearthing what's happening far, far away from our planet. What this new image from the James Webb Space Telescope tells us about two galaxies. That's coming up next in the future of everything. And now for the future of everything. 2 years ago today, the universe cracked open just a little bit wider. The James Webb Space Telescope beamed back its first images, and it's been sending back discoveries like these ever since.
Oh my gosh! The first image from the James Webb Space Telescope, and here it is.
Behold, the Cartwheel Galaxy.
What you're looking at here is a dying star.
This one is the clearest image that we've ever had of Uranus, and more importantly, its rings.
This is a photo of the closest star-forming region to Earth, where stars are born.
That right there is the dopest picture you will see of Saturn.
And that right there is the dopest telescope there is in the universe right now. The Webb's gold-coated mirrors and infrared vision allows it to see billions of years back in time at exoplanets, baby stars, distant galaxies. And NASA just dropped Webb's latest discovery. There it is right there. You're looking at not just one, but two galaxies that are spinning and dancing around each other, and their nickname is the Penguin and the Egg. Hundreds of millions of years from now, experts say those two galaxies will merge into one. And joining us now is Dr. Paul Sutter, astrophysicist, NASA advisor, and author of How to Die in Space. Doc, thank you so much for joining us. So these galaxies that we're seeing here in this intricate dance, this isn't a new discovery, but this is like HD to the next level, right?
Absolutely. This truly showcases the power of this dope telescope. James Webb's real power is that it sees in different wavelengths of light. It doesn't see invisible light. It sees in infrared light. It's like a night vision goggles or heat-sensitive goggles. It allows us to pierce through clouds of gas and dust and really get to the heart of these distant objects, to see what really makes them tick, to see what really is going on underneath all those veils of gas and dust.
And these images are stunning, and yet I'm still trying to wrap my head around the first image that we ever saw coming from Hubble, or from Webb. And I know Carina Nebula, that's one of your personal favorites too, right?
Oh, absolutely. This one, it's so beautiful to me. It's so striking to me. This is from a nebula about 7,000 light years away from Earth. It sits in our own Milky Way galaxy. What you're seeing is a region of newborn stars. You're seeing a nursery of stars. And all these interesting cracks and crevices and undulations, these are caused by the light from those newborn stars carving out pockets of gas around them, like waves from the ocean carve out rocks on the seashore. And so you can really see in this one snapshot the dynamism, the activity, and the beauty and the power that happens in the universe every single day.
Nothing to put the miracle of life into perspective like that. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. And finally, in tonight's The Best of Us, I'm not sure what you were doing when you were 8, but I know I was definitely not doing this.
Stereo Violins 1. Whose pose don't blow semitone.
Wait a minute. This says he's 8 now. He was actually 6 when he was doing that you're seeing right there. His name is Miles. He is a musical genius, as you can tell. So there's no surprise that he is releasing his first single next month for a label owned by Universal Music. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa introduces us to this soon-to-be superstar.
I came back to let you know. Let go.
Sitting at his parents' piano in this suburban Chicago living room, 8-year-old Miles Bonham proves he's a prodigy.
We can make it if we try.
To Miles, mashing 2 iconic songs together feels like child's play.
Tell me why those 2 songs work together.
It's because they have the same chord progression.
A simple answer from a social media sensation. Known as Miles the Music Kid.
I'm gonna add reverb. I use Female Vox 01. I'm gonna take a bit of a break.
This soon-to-be 3rd grader routinely dazzles his millions of followers, recreating popular songs and producing his own. By playing any of 7 instruments he's mastered, and using production software that baffles most adults.
This is me saying something for Miles's NBC demo track.
Even when he offers to demonstrate.
That's from my voice?
Mm-hmm. His parents say it began when Miles was 4, and his fascination with Dad's guitar, a lifelong hobby, led them to contact a local teacher.
She said, your child has perfect pitch. And I said, what?
Perfect pitch, a skill boasted by roughly 1% of the population.
That is a B-flat major 7.
Very good.
Yes, score.
By 5, Miles commandeered the family computer and started producing.
We realized Miles had recreated Still Dre in GarageBand by himself, and we had no idea that he knew how to use that software. We didn't know that he knew Still Dre.
Among his throngs of fans, music industry icons like Questlove and Pharrell.
Miles, my man, my peer.
And Mark Ronson, who invited Miles into his studio.
Oh my God, this guy, Miles.
One of the most special experiences watching Miles hop and skip, literally, into Electric Lady Studios in New York City.
I think I'm ready.
They really do treat him like a pro and a peer.
It's Miles! Oh my God!
That star power, not lost on Miles.
Were you surprised that they wanted to work with you and sit down with you?
Yeah. I was
Why?
surprised because I thought this was just normal, and then I started realizing, wait, it's because they think I have talent, and I do, and then I'm proud, you know?
Not nearly as proud as his parents, who work in tech and child development and are determined to shield their kids, including little sister Charlie, from pressure.
Our focus is not on getting content, it's living our lives and being good parents.
Letting Miles the Music Kid remain a kid, while the world revels in his remarkable talent. Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
If Beethoven had garage band, it would probably look like that. Miles, you are incredible. That's going to do it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz. NBC News Now will be in wall-to-wall RNC coverage during prime time next week. That includes this hour. And another reminder, Lester Holt is going to be sitting down with President Biden in an exclusive one-on-one interview on Monday. You can watch a preview on NBC Nightly News and then the full unedited interview in a primetime special at 9 p.m. Eastern on your NBC station, as well as here at NBC News Now. Then our coverage of the Republican National Convention will continue at 9:30 with the NBC News team in Milwaukee. We'll be back next Friday, but until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.